This presentation is discussing the use of awareness training in reducing nervous behaviors during public speaking. The members of this group include Laura Blodgett, Madeline DeVincenzi, Julia Mulhall, Morgan Atone, Margaret Phillips, and Tiffany Stanfield. To start, we're going to discuss some literature related to this topic. Public speaking anxiety is considered a social phobia. It is one of the most common psychological problems in the United States. It is reported that the prevalence of public speaking anxiety ranges from 11% to up to 30% of Americans. Bartholomew and Houlihan suggest that even 1 in 5 individuals experience public speaking anxiety. Competencies within public speaking can influence many aspects of a person's life. Public speaking competencies are a very valuable asset. Public speaking skills can be considered a feature of professional success, which include a positive reputation, increased credibility, other professional advantages. Public speaking anxiety leads to the use of nervous habits, such as filled pauses, which include the use of ah, or interjecting the word like, and making tongue click sounds or clicking sounds made with the mouth are all notable nervous habits discussed. Mancuso and Miltenberg suggest that the use of nervous habits during public speaking have the potential of negative social consequences. Much research treating nervous habits during public speaking have been successfully treated with the use of awareness training as a component to the intervention. Not much research has shown use of awareness training on its own. So awareness training is a process in which the participant is made aware of the target behaviors when the behaviors occur. In this case, the use of hand signals was the process, I guess. When the use of the habit was used, the participant and the data collector both would raise their hand as the signal. In addition, awareness training is often a self-monitoring process in which the participant consistently identifies the use and records the use of the defined habit. Oftentimes, the awareness training component is faded or removed once the participant is consistently self-aware of the occurrence of behavior, which in this study was the case. Each participant within this study received 100% of accuracy in reporting their behaviors during the awareness training process. Awareness training is often used within a multi-treatment intervention known as habit reversal training. Much research shows that the use of habit reversal training is the most effective procedure in reducing habit behaviors or habit disorders. Habit reversal training incorporates 4 components of treatment, including awareness training, competing response practice, habit control motivation, and generalization training. Speiler and Miltenberg suggest that awareness training on its own may be successful at reducing nervous behaviors during public speaking. And this research also wants to look at that relationship of awareness training on its own and the effects of reducing the nervous habit behaviors during public speaking. Additional researchers have been examining the effectiveness of awareness training alone. Using awareness training alone, Wright and Miltenberg were successful at teaching a 19-year-old student to demonstrate, identify, and record each instance of head and eyebrow tics. Awareness training alone was successful at reducing tics for a student with chronic motor tics. Using the awareness training alone has the potential to reduce the use of nervous habits during public speaking.
The purpose of the study is to measure the effectiveness of awareness training for decreasing nervous habits during public speaking. There were 6 master's students that were participants who attend Ball State University. These include Laura Blodgett, Madeline DeVincenzi, Julia Mulhall, Morgan Atone, Margaret Phillips, and Tiffany Stanfield. The setting in which this study took place was group video chats via Google Hangouts and YouTube Live. There were many materials needed for the study, including a timer, computer, data sheets, speech topics, paper to write down speech notes, one red colored 8 by 11 piece of paper, one white 8 by 11 piece of paper, and a pen or pencil.
The behavior definitions for this study were filled pauses, tongue clicks, and likes. Filled pauses were defined as any occurrence of the use of a non-somatic word or speech sound, or a word without meaning during or between sentences. Frequency of occurrence of the filled pauses will be scored upon the ending of the non-somatic word. Examples of filled pauses include utterances such as or Non-examples of filled pauses include clearings, one throats, or a cough. Tongue clicks are defined as a speaker emitting or clicking a smacking sound with their tongue. This is done with either the use of the lips or the roof of their mouth and could be heard through the audio of the video. Frequency of occurrences of tongue clicks will be scored upon the ending of each smack sound or click. An example of tongue clicks is smacking sound made with the tongue suctioning the roof of the mouth. Non-examples include licking, lips, swallowing, or pursing of the lips. Lastly, likes are defined as the occurrence of the word like in a speech that did not hold the meaning in the structure of the sentence or follow correct grammatical form. Frequency of the occurrence of the like will be scored upon the ending of the use of like. Examples of incorrect use of likes include the speaker saying like before describing what someone said. For example, she was like, I don't want to do that. Or saying like before recalling an event, for example, and then she was like really excited about it. Or saying like when describing objects, persons, locations, etc. Example, I had like 4 flowers on the tree. Or using like to fill a pause. Non-example of the speaker saying like to describe interests such as I like ice cream. Or comparing two concepts of or objects. I am a lot like her mother. The research design for this study was a multiple baseline across participants. Data was collected on the occurrence of target behaviors using video recordings of both baseline and intervention sessions. Frequency data was recorded separately for each type of target behavior. However, graphs will depict the total number of all occurrences of all nervous habits per session.
For the baseline phase, 6 participants were given multiple topics and were instructed to complete no more than 10 minutes of research per topic. During research, participants could take notes on note cards, but could only make points and not full sentences. All participants met via Google Hangouts to deliver speeches and collect data on others. During speech delivery, data collectors' faces remained expressionless, and they withheld gestures and feedback. The speeches lasted between 3 and 5 minutes. To start, one data collector counted down from 3 to 1 and pressed start on a timer as they said 1. When 3 minutes lapsed, a white sheet of paper was held up, and the data collector held up a red sheet when 5 minutes had lapsed. Once the 5 minutes was up, the speech ended. Once all participants delivered their speeches, baseline was complete.
For the intervention phase, the primary data collector first discussed the behaviors observed during baseline. This response description involved a discussion about each of the participants' behaviors that were targeted for reduction. Those targeted behaviors included tongue clicks, filled pauses, and the inappropriate usage of the word like. It also included individualized topographies and operational definitions. The primary data collector then showed the participant a video from the baseline session. While viewing the video, response detection was utilized to identify when the target behaviors were occurring. Then the participant chose a topic to speak about for 3 to 5 minutes. The participants were given 10 minutes to prepare for the speech. While speaking, the participant and the primary data collector raised their hands if the target behavior occurred during the beginning of the speech. After the first 5 occurrences, the primary data collector only raised their hand to prompt the participant if the participant failed to identify the occurrence of a behavior within 2 seconds.
Here's an example video of the speeches that were used and conducted for this study. These videos are a good example of the use of the cards as a duration prompt. You can't see the timer, but the primary data collector has the timer as a material. It also is a good example of the use of the countdown, the 3, 2, 1, and the beginning of the speeches. It also shows the type of topics that were discussed during the speeches. So they were very lighthearted, easy speeches to research and to come up with the 10-minute time limit as far as preparing for the speeches. Also, you can see the use of some of the hand signals. So this was the post-awareness training phase. However, we noticed as we were going through the different phases of treatment that we were still aware of the nervous habits. And when we did engage in those nervous habits, even though we were no longer in the awareness training phase, we would still sometimes raise our hand and become aware of when we were doing those habits.
For children, yes or no, and why? I choose no. I don't think that kids should get participation trophies. The reason is because I think that children need to learn how to earn things. If you get a participation trophy just for playing in a game and you're not winning, it's not teaching the children to work towards anything or to work harder. They're going to think that whatever they're doing currently is good enough and they're going to get things. I think that we're doing a lot of coddling for kids these days. Teachers can't take away recess anymore. You can't, in some schools, you can't put kids in timeout. And in a lot of schools, you're not allowed to give really any criticism in sports. And I think that that's a big problem for younger kids and older kids. My boyfriend coached in a high school lacrosse team, and he would have a kid sit out if they weren't doing as well as the other starters and put somebody else in. And there were two times when a kid quit. 2 different kids quit because they were kept out of a game because they were not playing to their best. So I think that that might be a result of this. You get credit for anything you do. You get credit for not trying your absolute best. You get to start in the game even though somebody else played better than you in practice, because everyone should get a turn. But that's not how it works in competitive sports. You should only be able to play when you have earned your position. And I think that to be able to really instill that in children, to be able to act that way when they're older, you need to start when you're young. And that is why participation trophies are not a good idea. Because again, like I had said, if you start a kid off thinking that any type of effort is good enough, they're not going to make it in a competitive sport. I played competitive sports my entire life. I played soccer all throughout college, and I had very hard coaches. And my parents were very hard on me too, but in a tasteful way. And they would give me constructive criticism, which made me want to do better because I wanted to make myself and my parents proud. I personally don't think that my parents would even have let me accept a participation trophy if I was young, unless I really earned the trophy that was being given to me. So, no to participation trophies. That's my opinion. Yay.
Three, 2, 1, begin.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about my life. It's an autobiography of Laura Blodgett. I was born on October 27th, 1993 in Greensburg, Indiana. My parents are Tracy and Kelly Blodgett. I have an older brother named Travis and an older sister named Casey. My parents lived in a small rural house outside of Greensburg, where we had a huge yard, lots of room to play. We were always rollerblading and sleeping outside in a tent with my siblings, playing with a neighbor girl. We were always running around, playing all the time, always outside. I remember one time my siblings set up a tent and it started to storm and I was asleep outside. And they went inside to go to bed in their beds and they left me outside in the tent. And I woke up at 5 a.m. so scared because my siblings were gone and it was windy and there was a hole in our tent. That was very traumatic. So I lived with my parents in that house until I was about 7. And then my parents divorced and me, my mom, and my siblings moved to a smaller house outside of town. I went to the same school, had the same friends, and I still saw my dad on the weekends. I went to North Decatur Elementary School, and I went to North Decatur Junior Senior High School. In elementary school, I had the 2 best of friends I met in 1st grade. Their names were Kyle and Jill. And Kyle and Jill and I have been friends for 20 years now. Jill and Kyle are both going to be at my wedding. Jill's going to be my maid of honor, and Kyle's going to be my bridesman. I graduated North Decatur with 76 kids. We had a super small grade. We were all super close. We all go to each other's weddings and congratulate each other on having children. We all stay in contact, and we're all really there for each other. After high school, I went to college at Hanover College in Southern Indiana. It was a liberal arts school, and it was also really tiny. My graduating class was like 300. There was a total of 1,200 kids at the school, so it was a super small college as well. There is where I met my fiance. He was in a fraternity, and I met him one night at a party, and I met him when I was 20, and we'd been friends for a couple of years, and then we started dating. After we both graduated college, then I moved up here to Carmel, Indiana. I worked at a summer camp as a camp counselor, and there is where I met an ABA therapist who got me into the field. I had never even heard of ABA, didn't know anything about it. I started at an ABA center in the summer of 2016, and I've been there ever since. I started as a therapist and worked in the early learner program. So the kids that I work with range from 2 to 7. Then I was a therapist for 2 years, and then I started school and got a position as a program manager apprentice. So I work directly under a behavior analyst, and we have our own caseload of 7 kids. And our youngest kid that we have on our caseload is 2, and our oldest kid is 6. And they range in many functionalities from super low functioning to headed to school. So it's been a weird path, but I ended up doing what I wanted to do, and now I'm in grad school learning about it.
Hey.
So as I said, that was an example video of the types of topics that we used, the use of the hand signals, and the use of cards, the timer, the calm face of the primary data collector, and the countdown.
While each speaker made their speech, there were 2 other members of the group acting as primary data collectors. Each primary data collector took data for the entirety of the participant's speech, and then IOA was calculated. This was done for 33% of speeches, which equals out to 5 out of 15 speeches for each speaker, making a total of 30 speeches that IOA was taken for. The IOA calculations were total count IOA, which is calculated by dividing the smaller count by the larger count and multiplying by 100. Mean count per interval IOA was calculated by adding sessions 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5's IOA results together and then dividing them by the number of intervals, which is 5, and timesing that by 100. exact count per interval IOA was calculated by the number of sessions that were 100% for a participant divided by the number of total intervals, which is 5, and timesing that by 100. Each participant had 2 data collectors. From those 2 data collectors, IOA was calculated. This table shows that IOA was at a higher percentage when habits were decreasing with each session. The assigned research assistant for each speech watched the speech session recorded on YouTube Live. While the research assistant watched the speech, they recorded on the primary data collector checklist, which you will see in the next slide. They recorded a check mark if the primary data collector completed the step, or an X if the primary data collector did not complete the step. The number of check marks for all steps was divided by the total number of all check marks and all X's for all steps from the 33% of sessions observed to determine treatment integrity. Any steps that were not applicable were noted with an NA and were not considered in the treatment fidelity calculation. For example, if a speaker ended before the 5-minute red paper was shown, this would not count as an X for that step and would be considered not applicable. Treatment fidelity was 100% across all 33% of sessions observed. What you see here is the primary data collector checklist, and this is what the research assistant would refer to when taking treatment integrity data. Baseline 1 sessions, the primary data collector states a vocal countdown for the speaker to begin. 3, 2, 1, and begins the timer simultaneously to start. The primary data collector raises a white sheet of paper when 3 minutes has passed. The primary data collector raises a red sheet of paper when the 5 minutes has ended. The primary data collector will prompt the speaker if they have paused for 15 seconds or more, and/or will prompt the speaker to continue speaking if the speaker attempts to end the speech before the 3-minute period has passed. The primary data collector will refrain from making any facial expressions or giving any feedback other than the step before this one to prompt the speaker if they have paused for 15 seconds or try to end before the 3-minute mark. For the treatment phase, the primary data collector will discuss with the speaker what target behaviors were observed during their baseline speech before the speaker is to do their next speech. The primary data collector explains to the speaker that they are to raise their right hand every time they notice there is an occurrence of their targeted behavior. The primary data collector will also raise their hand along with the speaker, but they will only raise their hand for the first 5 instances of targeted behaviors. Then they will stop and the speaker will continue to raise their hands. The primary data collector would raise their hand again after the 5 instances, only if the speaker did not recognize that there had been a targeted behavior, and this would be considered their prompt. The primary data collector then explains that the speaker will do this until they are able to identify, by raising their right hand, 100% of all the occurrences of the targeted behaviors during their speech. The post treatment is the same as the baseline, which I explained previously.
So now we're going to discuss the results of each individual participant. We are going to start with participant Laura. She entered baseline first.
Participant Laura stayed in the baseline for 5 sessions, with each session having 7 to 10 instances of nervous habits. During baseline, participant Laura's most occurring habit was filled pauses. After there was 100% accuracy achieved during awareness training, participant Laura entered the post-awareness session. During the baseline phase, the average of occurrences was 8.4 and 4.2 for the post-awareness training session. The baseline range was 7 to 10 occurrences and 2 to 8 occurrences for the post-awareness training.
Participant Tiffany stayed in baseline phase for 6 sessions, with each session having 3 to 4 instances of nervous habits. During baseline, participant Tiffany's most occurring habits were filled pauses. After 100% accuracy was achieved during awareness training, participant Tiffany entered the post-awareness phase. During baseline, the average occurrence of behaviors was 3.5, and 0.77 in the post-awareness training phase. Behaviors range from 3 to 4 occurrences during baseline and 0 to 3 occurrences during post-awareness training.
Participant Julia had the second highest rate of behaviors during the first baseline speech, with 20 instances of habit behaviors. Of these 20 instances of habit behaviors, 19 were the use of filled pauses. Participant Julia entered the post-awareness training after 100% accuracy of self-awareness during the awareness training session. Prior to awareness training, nervous behaviors were at an average of 10.4 instances per session. Following awareness training, nervous behaviors decreased to an average of 1.9 instances. The range of instances of habits during the baseline phase for participant Julia was 9 to 20 instances, and the range of occurrence of habits per session during the post-awareness training phase was 0 to 3 instances.
Participant Madeline stayed in the baseline phase for 8 sessions, with each session having 0 to 4 instances of nervous habits. During baseline, participant Madeline's most occurring habits were tongue clicks. After there were 100% accuracy achieved during awareness training, participant Madeline entered post-awareness training. During baseline, the average occurrence of behaviors was 3.2 and 0.92 in the post-AT phase. Behaviors range from 0 to 3 occurrences during baseline and 0 to 4 during post-AT.
Participant Morgan participated in 6 baseline sessions before seeing a behavior change. The participant then entered the post-awareness training sessions after 100% accuracy for self-awareness was reached. During baseline, the average of habits per session was 1.83 and the range was 1 to 4. During post-awareness training, the average of habits per session was 0.66 and the range was 0 to 2. Total average of all behaviors was 1.13 and total range was 0 to 4. Throughout all 15 sessions, participant Morgan had a total of 7 filled pauses, 1 instance of the incorrect usage of the word like, and 9 tongue clicks.
Participant Margaret exhibited the highest rates of nervous habits during the first baseline speech, with 24 instances of nervous habit behavior. Of the 24 instances of habits behavior in the initial session, 20 were filled pauses. Participant Margaret entered the post-awareness training after 100% accuracy of self-awareness during the self-awareness training session. Before the awareness training, nervous behaviors occurred at an average rate of 14.2 instances per session. During the post-awareness phase, the average of habits per session for participant Margaret decreased to an average of 4.8, with a range of 3 to 6 instances. Here is the multiple baseline graph for all 6 participants.
Based upon the multiple baseline graph representing all 6 of the participants' results, it can be concluded that the treatment of the awareness training was effective in decreasing nervous habits during public speaking. Participant Margaret and Julia had considerably less nervous habits post-awareness training compared to their baseline. Participant Morgan, Laura, Maddie, and Tiffany had at least 1 or more post-awareness training sessions overlapping with baseline. However, towards the end of the post-awareness training session, the nervous habits had decreased for the participant Morgan, Laura, Maddie, and Tiffany. The most successful participants in terms of the post-awareness training results included Margaret and Julia. Margaret's baseline average was 14.2, and after post-awareness training decreased to 4.8. Julia's baseline average was 10.4, and after post-awareness and during post-awareness training decreased to 1.9. The other participants' post-awareness training average were less significant compared to baseline, but still exhibited a decrease in overall nervous habits.
There were many limitations in this. First of all, sample size was too small, which created limited causal and correlation effects from the data. Second, there was not a representative distribution of the entire population, and thus applying the results to the entire population was not possible because all group members were master's students and women. Third, self-reported data was not independently verified. Fourth, limited time to conduct the study, which affected how well the study was completed. And five, there's other potential limitations, which include select memory, remembering or not remembering events or experiences that have occurred before, telescoping, remembering events or experiences that occurred at some point in the past, attribution, attributing positive events to one's own agency, but attributing negative events to external forces, and exaggeration, embellishing events as more significant than is factual from data.
These are the references used for the literature review for this study, as well as referencing this for the methods and other aspects of the replication. And this is the group contributions for each members.